Hello. Thank you so much for these great questions. They gave me a great opportunity to consider my faith journey once again, especially in terms of what it was like for me growing up in church. I grew up in a place in western Washington called Auburn. I was born actually on a farm in Kent, Washington, and many of my most wonderful memories include animals like horses and cows, and I still love the smell of that environment. In Auburn, there was a United Methodist church around the corner from our house. And when I was playing in the backyard, I used to hear the hymns being played on the chimes. And it was very much capturing my imagination. And so I wanted to find out more about it. So I asked my parents to bring me there. And we began going. So I guess in a way I evangelized my parents when I was a child. We attended Auburn United Methodist Church. And as a young girl, I always sang. My grandfather, who was from Wales, had a wonderful voice, and he taught me to sing when I was a little girl. So I had a very mature voice at a young age, and they enlisted me to sing in the choir as a girl. And there I found wonderful nurturing from the women in the choir, especially from Ginny Andrews, who was the wife of our pastor at the time, Father Andrews. And she was a piano teacher and a wonderful spirit. And for many years, whenever I had something that was troubling me, she would essentially be my pastoral counselor. And she still attends the church there, that my mother does as well. And I visit her whenever I travel home to Washington. Then later, I went to school to study music. I used to practice music there in the church, the United Methodist Church. I remember practicing songs in different languages in the sanctuary and feeling very much like that was one connection that I had with God. And I would pray and practice. And I think those are two of my words still that I live by, practice and prayer. I remember very much Christmas Eve as a child, where they had candles and we would sing carols together. It was a very beautiful, romantic time, very soft and loving, warm time. Later, I traveled to Bellingham, Washington, where I studied music and theater, and I also sang and worshiped at a United Methodist church there. And I also spent time in nature. I would drive out Chuckanut Drive and sit and look at the ocean and pray. And that was very much a part of my spiritual life. So the natural beauty of Washington State was very much a part of my spiritual formation. Eventually, I traveled to the East Coast to Boston, Massachusetts, to attend conservatory and study opera. Another chance to learn about an art form bigger than myself, and in that way, very spiritual. In Boston, the conservatory was right across the street from St. Clement's Seminary and Eucharistic Shrine. And although I loved the enthusiasm of the United Methodist Church, I'd begun to long for a deeper sense of sacrament that I sensed I might find in the Catholic Church. And so I began inquiring at St. Clement's Shrine in conversations with Father Ernest Sherstone, that was his real name, and he was my mentor and went through confirmation classes with me that I enjoyed very much, and I actually became a part of the Catholic tradition. So I went from the Wesleyan Episcopalian tradition in Methodism to the Roman Catholic tradition, and it's interesting how I found my home back together in the Anglo-Catholic tradition of the Episcopal Church. When I was in Boston and later in New York, I became a sacred musician, and I sang at lots of different churches, some of them Episcopal, some of them Presbyterian. I even sang at a synagogue where I was very much inspired by a cantor who was there, who had formerly been an opera singer and had turned to become a clergywoman in the Jewish tradition. I was very inspired by her. Well, one day I was in New York and I was visiting an Episcopal church there, and I got to hear Bishop Barbara Harris. and I was so blown away by her. Bishop Harris was just an incredible godly woman, inspiring, full of the Holy Spirit, and smart as all get out. She really inspired me and awakened something in me, some questions about the role that women could play in the church that had the sacraments that I so love. And then I moved to Juneau, Alaska. I moved there to work with a theater company for the summer. I met Molly Smith, who was raised as a Roman Catholic and very much believed in liberation theology and in servant leadership. And Molly taught me how to integrate servant leadership into the world of the arts. And I was so excited because I learned about community. I learned about how to integrate my love of God and my love for other people more fully into what I was doing as an artist. And so, under Molly's leadership, I began a small opera company of my own and traveled around the state of Alaska. I lived in southeast Alaska in Juneau, which is a rainforest, and traveled all over the state. You can see behind me, over there, a glacier similar to what's in Juneau, but the Arctic. There's so many different villages and rural communities in Alaska. And we made classical music accessible to these small communities. So I like to think that that was another kind of evangelism, taking something that seemed so kind of lofty and far away as opera and making it something that could be embraced by someone who lived in Kathmandu above the Arctic Circle. So that was another aspect of my ministry. There I began attending Holy Trinity Episcopal Church, which is my sponsoring parish. I met Mother Paula Sampson, who became a mentor of mine. Paula teaches ethics at Vancouver School of Theology, which is interesting because later I would study with her ethics professor, Dr. Karen Labax, and became very interested in Christian ethics. Also at that time, Mark MacDonald was a huge spiritual presence in my life, and we had some difficult times. Holy Trinity, as you may know, had a fire and was burned down about 4 years ago, and that was around the time that I had nearly completed my time of discernment. I had entered into EFM, which I think is a great program. I became very hungry for spiritual learning and decided that indeed I wanted to enter the process of discernment. And during that process, I visited many schools in New York and Boston. Finally decided to go to the GTU in Berkeley, California. Paula had gone there and recommended that I go because she knew I was very interested in intercultural affairs and in creative ministries, which is what I learned there. So while I was there at the GTU, I had a very rich experience, a diverse experience indeed. I practiced in the chapel at PSR and also, of course, at CDSP. I took many classes at CDSP. I studied every semester. I studied some there. I got to study liturgics with Louis Weil. And at the same time, I got to study liturgical movement with Carlo de Sola. So I was so blessed with a wonderful array of experiences. I also want to go back a step and remember something difficult that happened before I went to seminary. The very week I sent in my application, I was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer. And this, of course, was a difficult time for me and my family, my husband and my young daughter and my adult son and my stepkids around the country. And we took it not as a sign that we should give up, but rather that God was bringing new blessings into our lives. It certainly did give me a sense of how precious life is, of friends and family. I went through treatment. I deferred my acceptance into school for a year. And then, with a brand new head of hair, I attended PSR. I did not attend CDSP because PSR allowed me to have more full experience of the GTU, which was really important to me. Also, PSR had a much more diverse range of students in terms of culture, ethnicity, and that was really important to me as well. But as I said, I studied with Myers, with Marian Grau, many wonderful Episcopal scholars and theologians, and as well as teachers at the Franciscan school, at the Jesuit school. I was so very blessed. During my time there, I became a soloist and intern at All Souls Church in Berkeley, a very big, sort of a suburban, urban church there in the heart of downtown Berkeley. I had a wonderful experience there. And I also worked at a church in the inner city in San Francisco. I did some work with their food bank. I did work with their HIV/AIDS clinic. And so I got to minister in a variety of atmospheres and began to come into my ministry of bridge building between communities, between cultures, between socioeconomic brackets. And my work as a storyteller, as a theater artist, was very helpful in these encounters. I was also youth director at Holy Innocents Church in San Francisco. This was a paid part-time job, and I got to work with youth formation, which was so fun. And we got to do theater together and music, and we had a wonderful time. I am now serving as a transitional deacon for the time being at St. Paul's Church in Oakland, which is a great community, a community of great gifts and also great need. And so I'm hoping to help bridge some of those gaps for them there, and that God will use me in this environment now. And so to wrap up, I'm in a place now where I am trying to, with God's help, integrate all the experiences in my life. I bring my experience of social justice work, both in Washington, D.C. and the capital of Juneau, Alaska, where I worked off and on at the state legislature, bringing that experience to be a faith-based advocate for social justice. I'm trying to bring that to parishes and help, again, to make things accessible to people, help them to understand that they too can write a letter, that they too can call a congressperson and talk to them about what's important to them as a Christian. I also am integrating my experience as an art manager into the world of church management, understanding things like family systems and how a church works and how to become a more effective leader in that environment. I'm also very interested in teaching. I taught theater at the University of Alaska Southeast, and now I am very interested in the pedagogy of the oppressed and in Christian education, how to educare, how to bring forth the best in each person, which is very much what I see the calling of a priest to be. In addition, I've done fundraising because as an artist, that's one of the things you have to do. And I continue to do that here in Oakland. I work with the Women's Cancer Resource Center and helping them to write grants and to do community development through storytelling. In addition, now I'm bringing that to bear as a consultant for the Diocese of Alaska, helping churches to become more comfortable with their stewardship program. And finally, I am also taking courses. I'm taking a DMin course at San Francisco Theological School in Pastoral Counseling. Mental health is a very important area I think that we need to know more and more about. So I am serving on the NAMI board of the East Bay and serving as a pastoral counselor pro bono as part of my DMin program at NAMI East Bay. And so I'm praying that God, who is the source of all things and contains all things, will bring all of these experiences and these gifts together to bring about God's kingdom. And so I hope to meet you, and I hope to talk to you about your hopes and dreams for Holy Spirit's battleground, and to see, to listen, to discern whether Holy Spirit has a relationship with my calling that might help to bring about God's kingdom in Clark County, Washington. And so I wish each of you God's rich and abundant blessing and peace in this very moment, in this very time. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today, and God's blessing.